I really do hope that for this player's sake, this video that we're making about him is not the last time we talk about this guy. I hope so, at least, because the past few videos we've made going over Nolan Patrick of the Vegas Golden Knights have been nothing but sad. They've been frustrating, they've been just unfortunate, because when it comes to this guy and his career, we just keep getting bad news after bad news after bad news, and now we have an even bigger piece of bad news that might be signaling the start of the end. And it comes from Elliotte Friedman on the recent edition of the 32 Thoughts podcast. Now, before we actually go into that, just a little bit of a news flash for anybody who has been living under a rock the past few, I'd say weeks, because the last time we talked about this guy was literally only a month ago. Nolan Patrick was supposed to be a really good player. When Austin Matthews was drafted first overall in 2016, people at that draft table were saying things like, hey, this guy, Nolan Patrick, he's going to be first overall in 2017, and he's going to be really good. He's going to be a top-line player, the next in line after McDavid and Matthews. Unfortunately, in his draft season, Nolan Patrick missed out on the majority of the year, only playing 33 games in the WHL. As a result, he was drafted not first, but second, and the Philadelphia Flyers put him in the NHL right away. He had 2 seasons wherein he played 73 and 72 games played, but migraine issues took him out for the entire 2019-20 season. He then suited back up for Philadelphia. He wasn't really all too great. There were some very public trade requests, and eventually he was sent over to Vegas, where he only played 25 games in 2021-2022. He had 7 points, which wasn't bad, but he still was pretty injury-plagued the entire time. Which is why the update that we had a month ago saying that Nolan Patrick might actually start out the year on the LTIR was pretty disappointing news for a lot of fans in the NHL, myself included, that had just been wanting to see this guy play a full year, healthy, and to the best of his hockey playing ability. This is the Dauber report back from April of 2018, so after his first season in the NHL as an 18-year-old, hey, guess what? Don't let his season totals fool you. Bearing injury, Nolan Patrick is going places. He will likely be learning more than anything else in his first Stanley Cup playoff run. However, he has the combination of skills and upside that the Flyers hoped for when they drafted him. While his 30 points may seem indicative of an uneventful campaign, Patrick finished the season on a stronger note with 21 points in 32 games. Move him up your fall draft boards accordingly, Edric Joseph wrote back then. Well, it's super unfortunate because of the injuries, Nolan Patrick stopped going places. And in fact, it looks like he might not be going any more places anymore either. Because if we go over to the recent edition of the 32 Thoughts podcast, this is what Elliotte Friedman had to say. By the way, the article that we're pulling this quote from is on Vegas Hockey Now. You can click the link in the description below if you want to go ahead and read that. Friedman said that he had heard a rumor in the summer that Nolan Patrick was going to retire. Then, I was told, that's not the case. Patrick has a salary for this year of $1.2 million. There's no point in him retiring, as he has a salary to collect. Last season, Patrick only got into 25 games and put up 7 points. The former second overall pick has dealt with multiple injuries throughout his young NHL career, and his most recent injury is reportedly an upper body injury that he has had since the early stages of last season. I think there would be a lot of people that would be surprised to see him play this year, and they wonder about his future too, added Friedman. Now, his comments do not go out there and completely rule out a return to the ice for Nolan Patrick this year, but from the way things look, things are unlikely. Patrick will likely join Robin Lehner and Shea Weber on the LTIR for the Golden Knights. This would give the team roughly $3.8 million in salary cap space. And this is why I wanted to make this video one more time, even though the last update we had about this guy a month ago said that he was going to be on the LTIR, because now it's kind of real now, isn't it? This was the same thing that we had talked about with Carey Price a few days ago as well, that, hey, after all the conversations about him on the LTIR, etc., this is it. Elliotte Friedman talks about the rumors of Patrick retiring, for crying out loud. And while that might not be the case, the fact that he might not even play a single game this season at all, like, imagine the guy going through 2 years of zero. He had a 2019-20 stint where he played 0 games for the Flyers, and he might have a 2022-2023 stint with the Golden Knights wherein he played 0 games as well. Like, How devastating must that be when you remember the April 2018 report that we had saying, hey, the guy had 21 points in his last 32 games of the season, and he's looking to be good because he was drafted by Philadelphia 2nd overall, and he was great. Like, I didn't know that the injury troubles that followed him around in junior, which is why he missed out on his draft season, or most of the draft season, specifically speaking, to cause him to get drafted 2nd overall in the first place. It's kind of crazy to me how those injury woes have carried over so much with migraines and all this crap that he's had to deal with at the NHL level after being a 1st overall projected pick in the 2015-2016 range of his life. Like, we had talked about this previously, but imagine that. In 2016, when Austin Matthews was taken first, this guy was being told by the media, yeah, you're going to be the next one, baby. You're going to be 1st overall next year. It's almost like Shane Wright, but not really. I mean, okay, maybe Shane Wright had it a bit worse because Shane Wright dropped 3 spots rather than just 1, but still, at least Shane Wright was healthy the entire time. He had a down year, which is why he dropped 3 spots, and not because he was out for half the season. Also, the OHL campaign the prior year wasn't there because, yeah, the pandemic shut down the OHL for Wright, so it's kind of different. But for Nolan Patrick, I mean, this is not really a guy just underperforming. This is a guy getting affected by so many years of health-related concerns that now, I mean, he's making $1 million a year, which is nice, but there's a level of pride that I feel that should be attached to these types of situations where it's like, yeah, this guy was supposed to be an NHL star, but now he might not even play again. He might retire soon. And it gets even worse when you acknowledge the comments that Kelly McCrimmon made, I believe it was earlier this summer, where he was like, yeah, we just want to get Nolan healthy and living his life normally again. This goes beyond just the ice, man. This goes beyond the hockey playing ability. This goes beyond sports. This is a guy that, if things are as bad as we might believe that they could be, he's not able to go out there and get up in the morning in the same way that he was able to like 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. They're being kind of ambiguous as to what the injury actually is, but if it has something to do with those migraines that we had talked about earlier, like, it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. So, for Nolan Patrick and everything he has gone through, I'm super devastated to see everything go down the way it has been, especially as a guy that, like, I always loved talking about prospects and looking at the future and seeing what guys could become, you know, like Nolan Patrick was supposed to be maybe a 70, 80-point first-line center with good two-way ability, with size, with playmaking ability, with skill. Like, Nolan Patrick was supposed to be a solid hockey player, but nah. Now, when it comes to the Philadelphia Flyers, there are a few curses of that team on their own. I mean, we can talk about Sean Couturier tomorrow. I guess I kind of want to do that, actually. We had already talked about Ryan Ellis and his situation, so for Sean Couturier, I mean, it's kind of a similar thing going on with the Flyers, and then when you remember that Nolan Patrick was also a Flyer before, it kind of makes things very interesting when you acknowledge how bad the luck over there seems to be in the City of Love when it comes to these legitimately good players getting taken out for an extended amount of time, but either way, talk to the comments all your thoughts about Nolan Patrick. Links will be in the description to the Vegas Hockey Now article that we talked about, as well as the 32 Thoughts podcast, where Elliot Friedman lays out the quote on Patrick and his status. But talk to the comments either way all your thoughts about this guy, his career, how things have gone, and what he could have been. Talk to the comments all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 99, and bye.